they sort of wanted to change the world, and they got involved in politics.
Sam, thank you so much for the time. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Amazing. Lovely to be here, Steve.
We're speaking, of course, with Sam Rice Edwards, one of the directors of One to One, John and Yoko. Uh, Sam, this is such a fascinating film. I actually thought it was going to be a concert film when I started, and it's so much more than that. Can you tell us, how did this begin? Why did you want to tell their story now?
Well, I mean, really to sort of explain that, I maybe have to take it back to the beginning of the fact that there was this concert footage of John's only concert after leaving the Beatles, the one-to-one concert, and it had sort of been sitting in a vault somewhere for a very long time, and people knew that it existed, but they wanted to, the idea was to do something with it, and really, Peter Worsley, the producer of the film, had had it in his mind for a long time and was kind of pushing for this to happen, and eventually connected to Kevin MacDonald, and yeah, Kevin was really into the idea and could see a lot of scope there, and I guess my involvement came through a call from Kevin, and he called me up and said, "Do you want to come and make a film about John and Yoko?" And which was immediately interesting, But there's obviously a lot out about the Beatles and so forth. But he was very clear. He said that what the first and foremost, he was really didn't want to make a film that rehashed any of the old stories, and it needed to be fresh and relevant. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, you know, I can't say no to this.
I love that, and even John, the recordings of John. There, somebody asks him a Beatles question, and he just says, "Well, the Beatles don't exist anymore, do they?"
Mm.
And but I love how this is pieced together. We get to experience him on stage, and at the same time, we get these connections with television, and I want to get to that in a minute. But I did see in looking over the film that the music was done by Sean Ono Lennon. Is that correct? He was helping you
Yeah,
with the film.
yeah. So Sean basically remastered all the music to the concert and did an amazing job. And it's really it's funny. It kind of got better and better and better as we were working away on the film, and Sean was kind of working on remastering the music. And when we did the final mix, everyone was really blown away because it really, I mean, the performance, John and Yoko's performance, and is amazing. It's really, for John, such a kind of unique moment of this, his only concert after the Beatles. But his performance is amazing. Yoko's performance is amazing. But when you got the full remastered music added to that, everything came together at the end, and it was a really kind of great moment in the final mix listening to it.
Well, and I was wondering too, like as you and Kevin McDonald, your co-director, are working with Sean, and as this film's coming together, was there an aspect? I mean, this is his parents.
Yeah.
Uh, was there an aspect of their lives that you felt needed to be brought forward the most, or that he wanted to see on screen?
I mean, he that look, the Lennon estate really respected Kevin as a filmmaker, and they didn't really get at all involved in the content of the film. And to be honest, they were super supportive. But this wasn't a puff. It's not a puff piece. It's a real film that is you know we had the support in terms of archive from the Lennon estate, but they never sort of sent in any demands or anything like that. So that they were great actually. And in terms of what came to the fore in the story, I mean, really, what we were really setting out to make a film where it was an experience for the audience, and you got to spend time with John and Yoko in a way that maybe hadn't been possible before in other films that were maybe more straightforward films, more heavily narratively driven, informationally driven. Film is a bit freer, and maybe you get a bit more time to spend actually with John and Yoko in a way that they are when they're away from the public eye. And also, just to understand through the archive clips, the world in which they were living. So we weren't really forcing the narrative. We sort of let the narrative play out as we built the film.
And I love that. Like this is one of the things I love, sort of the interplay with these vignettes, almost vignettes, but then the performances as well. But then, so I'd love to talk to you about the role of TV.
Mhm.
I mean, John says, I'm more than comfortable watching a lot of TV. But you're not only showing news clips here, like The Price is Right drops at one point, and we're seeing ads, commercials, and it almost feels like we have the raw history, and then we have the distraction. And I was wondering, in your mind, what was the purpose of bringing TV into this in the way that you do?
Well, we were the beginning of creating the film was a lot of sitting around talking about what direction to go in, and literally we had the concert footage, but really it was very wide open as what to do with it. But we slowly understood that we wanted to tell, they came to New York in this kind of escaping the UK in a way, and they were spending 18 months. They lived in this very small apartment for 18 months in Greenwich Village that opened onto the street. The most famous couple in the world, which is, so if you knocked on the door, they'd open the door. And so we knew that sort of became our time frame because it kind of culminated in the concert. And but we also wanted to tell the world, to express an idea, give the audience the experience of the world that they were living in, really see the world through John and Yoko's eyes. And we know that, from their apartment, the phone calls you hear came into that apartment. Also, they basically loved watching television. They felt that it was really the expression of, humanity was all there on the television, that we kind of express who we are through the TV. So they watched a lot of television and they talked about that a lot. And Kevin came up with this idea of like, well, why don't we express, show the world that they live in through through their television, and by snippets of different bits of TV, and you can have a bit of news next to a performance of something, next to a documentary, and next to a commercial, really in this kind of quite um, sort of experimental way. And I was at first I was a bit, I was like, is this going to work? But I knew that that was a good feeling because we were stepping outside the comfort zone, and we were kind of getting into a more interesting area. So that was really it. We wanted, we thought it was a good format to really show the world that they were in.
Well, it really adds to their lives, or at least the story you're telling about them, I think, in an interesting way. And we hear some of their phone calls that he's recorded, as he says, and out of that, he says something interesting about himself. John refers to himself as a revolutionary artist.
Mm.
And I was wondering, in your mind, what made John and Yoko revolutionary artists for their time?
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I guess there's a couple of different answers. I mean, I think I guess maybe the question is why he saw himself as a revolutionary artist at that point. And and they came to New York, as I said, escaping the UK and all the fallout from the Beatles and the real attacks on Yoko, um, found this new world, and connected to a lot of radicals and artists in Greenwich Village. And they also arrived, feeling very powerful, like they could change the world. I mean, they, if you imagine what John had been through with the Beatles, and now he was kind of still had the fame, but now had, could do what he wanted, as it were. He didn't have to consult anyone else. So they sort of wanted to change the world, and they got involved in politics. And so I think at that point, he's him along with Jerry Rubin and Yoko, kind of, they felt that they could make an impact, that they could they could energize the youth, re-energize the youth to push back against Nixon. And so I think that's why he kind of thought himself as a revolutionary artist at that point.
Well, can we talk about that relationship with is it's Joe Rubin, right? Is it Joe or John?
Jerry,
Jerry,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Jerry
No, no, no.
Rubin. That's a fascinating conversation. Like he and John Lennon's going on a talk show and he says, I want this guy with me.
Mhm.
What was that? How did that relationship inspire one another, if you will?
Well, I mean, I, I guess it was a sort of symbiotic relationship, in that, Jerry Rubin was very famous, sort of a leader of the counterculture, one of the Chicago Eight, it's probably the most famous of the Chicago, from the Chicago trial. But, someone who toured and gave a lot of speeches to students and, you could say, radicalized a lot of people. And, John turned up wanting to make a difference, and Jerry seemed to have a plan,
Mm,
and the plan was to, do all these things to sort of energize the youth, and he felt like that could be a strong body of the population to kind of to make an impact in politics. But, I guess the other way is that Jerry saw John Lennon as really someone who had a lot of pulling power. And, you could say that he kind of actually maybe was using John,
mm.
through this period. And I think, through the course of the film, you see them kind of interacting, but at a certain point, you know, John pulls away from this kind of idea of revolution, and maybe gets the sense that Jerry is using him a bit, and they kind of go their separate ways.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but I want to ask one more question off of that because I think it's John at the near the end of the film that says something very interesting. He says that the hardest thing is facing yourself. It's
Mhm.
easier to shout revolution than, taking a look inside or something to that effect. I might be misquoting it on the latter part of that, but I wondered what you thought of a statement like that and what that says about John and maybe us as a culture.
Well, I think in the context of this film, I think he says that at a point where he's maybe, losing heart with the idea of Jerry Rubin's revolution and violence and
Mhm.
protests, and for a number of reasons, both him and Yoko realize that they can't change the world politically. It's very difficult. There's a lot of things in their way, and they turn sort of more inward to maybe a more humanist kind of approach. I don't know if that's really quite the right word, but doing things in a smaller way, but using the power that they do have to do good things. And that's why the concert comes to be, so that they can help the children of Willowbrook who are in a very difficult situation. So it's a kind of pivotal moment in the film because it's where they turn away from this big political idea and sort of turn inward.
Absolutely. So, honestly, Sam, the film is wonderful. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. No, thank you very much for promoting the film. It's great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day.
Brilliant. And you take care.
Bye bye.